This is the Page Publishing Book Club. Thank you so much for stopping by tonight. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini, along with my engineer, Rob Barretts. Did I say it right? Barretts. I gotta do a little shout out to my baby boy. He is celebrating his 22nd birthday today. It is a day that will live in infamy. 36 hours of infamy, I want to tell you. Best 36 hours of my life. You know what I'm saying, Rob? It was a fun time. It's December 7th. You know what I'm saying? Yes, he's shaking his head. So happy birthday, Jake. I'm such a mush when it comes to my kids. I mean, I seriously would take a bullet for either one of them. They are by far the greatest thing I ever did in my life or will ever do in my life. And that's why our first author tonight just made me want to go home and hug my boys so hard their faces would explode. Judith Miller, she's never written a book before, but she was compelled to write this one, and you're going to find out why. She's written song lyrics, she's written poems, and commercial copy for radio, oddly enough. Where did you work in radio, Judith?
In western Kansas, central Kansas, and then I was at Wilmington, North Carolina.
Good for you. What did you do?
Started from the bottom and worked my way up. So when I retired, I was a general sales manager for a group in Wilmington. I loved the career. Things took a turn.
And you ended up writing?
Yes, it was, my son died, and before I had started back to work, I started working on photo albums and different things, compiling all of everything of his life that I could find, and I'd work on them for a while in the afternoons, and I put the things down on the table, and I heard this soft voice in my ear that you should write a book about this. And I'm thinking, me write a book? I don't know how to write a book. So anyway, that took me a while to accept that idea had been planted in my mind. So when I would share my story with other people, they kept saying the same thing, like a repeated message over and over, write about it, write about it. So I finally came to a point where I decided to go ahead and resign from my job and start writing. And then it took me quite a while to accept letting other people read it. It was so touchy-feely, to me yet. And then some of the things that occurred when I was writing or after my son had passed were so unusual to me that I thought people will definitely think I'm crazy. And when I would bring it up, they just could not understand what I was talking about, hearing voices, seeing pictures in my mind. So basically that's what started it all.
I'm so sorry, Judith. What happened?
He was diving, he and two young men, in a blue hole in the Bahamas, and they just didn't come back up. That was the day before Easter Sunday in '94, and they couldn't find my son. The other boys were from Virginia, and my son lived in the Bahamas. He was married to a young lady there. She had family in for the holiday, and he was taking some people on an excursion, diving and things like that. The mystery of what really happened is still to be revealed. I don't know really what took place down there.
How old was he?
25, yes.
Did they ever find him?
Yes, the Bahamian diving team couldn't go back in for another dive after they recovered the other two because one of the members became ill, and so we finally located divers from Florida to fly over. We chartered a jet and had them flown over, and they located his body on a Thursday. Diving accident was on Saturday, and they located him, I guess it was on a Wednesday, and then retrieved the body on Thursday.
I can't even imagine. Was this your only child?
Yes.
Judith, so this book is a tribute to your son.
Yes, and it tells the entire experience and some of the things that transpired in me of starting to pick up messages from him and also from others as it developed.
What do you mean pick up messages?
I would hear things, and I would see clear pictures in my mind and have vivid dreams. it just kind of developed in a whole new way of life for me. When we first returned home, there was a little crystal flipper ship that was in a showcase in our foyer, and I could see when we started walking in the door, I could see flashes of rainbows around the room. So I go and I look down the hallway, and the little solar stand it had been on wouldn't work. Well, it was turning round and around and around. And then other things started happening, like the TV would come on and go off, and radio would come on, and the lamps would come on. And I thought, well, Jay's trying to contact me, and very unusual things like that happened. And other people, when they would be there when it would happen, it scared them, or they thought I had some crazy scheme going on. That was absolutely not true.
Did you find comfort in this?
Yes, I did. I needed to know, that he was okay. And I believe that's what he was doing, was trying to let me know he was okay. My traditional religious beliefs, it was kind of hard to accept things like that. And I had a friend that I worked with at the radio station had mentioned the psychic medium that she had known for years, and she'd mentioned her to me, several months before, and I just, I kind of shrugged it off like, I don't quite get into that kind of thing. Well, it came to the point where I needed some help. I just was in pieces. And so I did call my friend, and she says, I was just thinking about you and thinking about calling and see if you would like to talk to this lady. I said, well, that's what I'd like to do. So that evening she gave me the phone number. I called the lady, and she gave me her address, and we set up a time. And I met with her the very next day, and that's where I started getting a better understanding of what was happening with me and what these revelations were happening in my life were all about.
Wow, Judith. When people read this book, is this to comfort people that have been through a similar experience?
Yes. When I finally decided to go ahead with publishing and releasing this, I'm living back in the community where I grew up. And people, I was so concerned about how they would accept reading material like this. And it has comforted me, and I knew that if I wasn't fulfilling my full purpose if I didn't publish it, because other people need help the same way I did. When I first started, through this experience, there was hardly anything written about a child's passing or what happens from that. I found some books about near-death experiences, which were kind of comforting, and some other books, but most of them back then were in the New Age section. And so you kind of squat down and look through the books, try to find something without somebody walking by and seeing you look at New Age stuff, but it was kind of frowned on even then. Now there's all kinds of TV programs about ghost stories and after-death experiences, that type of thing. So it's more understandable, but still not a lot, I don't think, written about a child dying, and you have that empty hole in your heart and nothing to replace it with. It's just still not too common to find books about that. So I finally went ahead and decided I had to bite the bullet and get it published and let other people get help from it. That was the whole purpose for me, my healing, and for other people's healing in their life.
Judith, that's awesome. Takes a lot of strength to do what you've done.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, loss of a loved one is,
Mm-hmm.
It's a rough one. And like you said, I believe that you can communicate with people that have passed. I think that they're
Mm-hmm.
always with us, and I don't know whether I often think, is that just something you're trying to talk yourself into? But I think there's something to it, and I think people are interested in that, find that fascinating. So thank you.
Yes, well, once you experience it, it's for real. I mean, you're just on. I've heard other people say, they're just on the other side of a veil, of the very thin space dividing us. they can communicate with us if we let them. And it's just like a little soft voice speaking in your ear. That's how I would hear things. And pictures in my mind, when I would start learning to meditate, they would come as flashes, real bright, vibrant colors, clear pictures. So it's a fascinating thing to experience. It's tough, but it's been a very good healing experience for me.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. All right, next up, Ken Pecoraro has been handing out his poetry to people for years, and everyone kept telling him, Ken, you should get your poems published. Well, now he has, and his book is called Heart of the Matter. So, Ken, what finally made you say, I'm taking the leap?
I've been writing this stuff for about 31 years, but I'm getting older now, and I've got all of this stuff. And I thought, I'm going to die. And, then this thing come on TV with you guys. And I thought, well, I'll check into it. And, one thing led to another. And, well, I'm dead and gone. Maybe because I like the yard sale. Maybe somebody will find one at a yard sale and pick it up and open it up. And maybe there'd be something in it that would encourage them. That's my premise, I guess, for doing it.
What are the poems about? Everything?
Yeah, I think so. I probably put maybe one in there I shouldn't have, but it's mostly Christian stuff. It's mostly what I believe about the Bible. I hope, Alice, that there's nothing in it that would offend anyone, Christian or not. I won't argue with anyone about what I respect everybody's belief in this world to believe whatever they want. I'm sure there's some people that won't embrace it because I am a Christian. And but I understand that, and I'm good with that. You know what I mean?
Ken, you can't worry about it. The simplest, craziest things offend people.
No, I'm not worried about it. I just most likely the ones that don't embrace it probably would need it the most. You know what I mean? But you can't sell them that. You can't. I don't think you should push God off on anybody. And I hope that comes out in my writings. I don't. I believe what I believe, and I believe it with my whole heart. But I won't argue with you about it or nobody about it. You know what I mean? I respect your opinion to be different.
Well, I appreciate that, Ken, and I think anybody listening will appreciate that. So
I hope so. I'm thinking about writing another one. I've got all the material to do it, and I took all the eyes out of it. So some of that's in this one is, I guess it's kind of like my opinion. So anything I've done for the last year, really, though, I've taken me out of it and left it more universal, I guess you'd say. I've wasted so much of my life. I think it's, some small thing I can do for God is really what it's about.
Ken, if that's what you believe and you're on the path you believe you're supposed to be on, that's all that matters. Ken, by the way, tells me he's giving out his books like he used to give out his poems. Ken, you're never going to make any money that way. You might want to, try to sell a few. All right, just saying. P.A. LaFraise is our next author. The P.A. stands for Patricia Ann. She's a science teacher in Rockland County, New York, not far from here. Desperate to explore her creative side, so she combined writing with her love of cooking and came up with chiffonade. Do you know what chiffonade is? No, Rob is shaking his head. Well, tell us what it is.
It's a type of knife cut, like if you're making a tomato mozzarella salad and you roll up the basil and you make it into thin ribbons, and it's just really symbolic of a heartbreak.
Of a heartbreak?
Yes.
Is this about heartbreak?
It's about a woman trying to overcome her heartbreak, a broken heart.
Do you relate to this at all?
I do from my past. I'm happily married for 10 years, but I think anyone, looking back, has experienced a broken heart or overcome obstacles, with the opposite sex. And
what kind of obstacles?
Life difficulties, things that get thrown in your path that you don't anticipate. When you think things are going smooth, a bump in the road comes along the way where you really have to kind of find the strength to pick yourself up and keep going, or you have a nice sort of team behind you that picks you up to make you keep going.
So who is this about?
Oh, it's a love story, about a woman who experiences this life obstacle, and she finds herself in sort of unfamiliar territory, and a team behind her that's trying to motivate and pick her up to get her back to being a successful writer and she finds herself again in uncharted territory with not knowing much about food, not knowing much about the South, and it turns out that unexpected things unfold there, even though there's a lot of negativity there. In the end, there's a very positive thing that comes out.
So this book kind of came to you out of nowhere, or you were saying over time?
Over time, my husband and I vacation every summer in the Tampa area, and it's the same families year in and year out, so that when we see each other, we always sort of at the end of the afternoon gravitate back towards the pool off the beach, and we always end up talking about food and about recipes and restaurants. So it has a lot of kind of Southern food flair to it as well.
So what about the timing on this?
I started it in Tampa about 3 years ago, and it took me about a year to write because I can't, again, during the school year, I can't write full time. It becomes more of a discipline that I have to do at night, in an hour, 2 hour blocks of time. So by the time it came together, and again, I've been working with Page Publishing for about a year now. Right. So it's kind of been this work in progress and finally out there. So I'm happy to see it out there.
Did you have any issues finding a publisher?
No. I think it was Page Publishing taking a risk on what I submitted because I didn't want to let it go to be read. It took a lot of kind of coaxing for me to let it go. Like I kept having in my brain that it's not done, I need to fix this, I need to fix that. And it was just kind of pressure with my husband and pressure from Page Publishing, like, just let it go. So I did.
So are people reading it?
They are. I'm actually doing 2 book clubs. A lot of them are teachers that I know. What's exciting about it is I don't have book club questions, so it's nice to sort of brainstorm with people to generate these questions.
Are they buying your book?
Yes, they are. And it's very weird to have to go to a book club and sign your book for somebody you know. I find that very strange. So everything is new for me. It's a new start on something that I don't have experience with.
Are you going to keep going with it?
Oh, sure. I'm halfway done my second novel.
Great.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. It's sort of like people that get addicted to the gym, which I wish I had in me. It's something I look forward to doing in my day, and I do it every single day.
A little every single day? That's amazing to me. Patricia writes for a couple of hours every night after she gets home from teaching a bunch of 8th graders. That to me is amazing. And then she keeps track of the dialogue. She keeps track of the storyline, writes a little bit, in her journal. And that's where the other side of her brain kicks in, that organizational side. And then she hooks up with her book club friends and she gets a little feedback, sells a couple of books. And that is one way to do it. All right, we are going to have to take a quick break, but we have more. We have more in store for you tonight, and you're going to love it. Do not touch that dial. This is the Page Publishing Book Club.
Attention all authors. Page Publishing is looking for authors. Have you written a book and want to get it published? Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, Apple iTunes, and other outlets. They handle all aspects of the publishing process for you. Printing, cover art, publicity, copyright, and editing. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. That's 800-204-6099 for your free author submission kit.
Welcome back to the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. We are packing them in tonight, Rob, I'll tell you. We have so many authors who can't wait to get on this show. We got to do as many as we can. All right, our next author is Emil Charles. He wrote Cross Country Connections, but you don't want me to call you Emil Charles, right? You want me to call you Time Check?
My social media name, my creative name is Time Check. That's Time Check, T-Y-M-E, Check. Because that's the name, because I'm also a photographer. I'm a producer. All my social media platforms is under Time Check. That's my creative name. That I go under. My book is under Time Check.
Then I say we go with Time Check.
Exactly, because if I use Emil Charles, I have no footprint. People's going to search that if they do decide to search, and they ain't going to find that out there.
Okay, so you got it. We'll call you Time Check.
Absolutely, great.
What the heck does that mean?
Time check is just, I'm an archiver, and I do a lot of photography. I'm an artist. I'm a producer, and time check is just means it's just another name that I created, and it's just just a cool name, just like Bono, like Sting, Prince. People could say what Prince or what Bono or what Sting means. They don't really mean it. That's just another name that they go by.
All right, time check. Why don't we talk about Cross Country Connection, your book?
Cross Country Connections is basically it's an action adventure book. Basically an action adventure book about the characters is basically a U.S. custom agent. When the lives of a U.S. custom agent and the lives of international theft ring. Their lives just cross paths in a surprising way, and basically you never realize what side of the law that you on until something at risk is to something that's precious to you is at risk. And the book is just like how their lives just mix together and cross, and just a good book about just capers and an adventure, a thriller book. I wrote other books. But I started writing this one because I wanted to appeal, to a wider audience, and I started writing it, a few years back, like maybe 8 years ago. And basically, I wrote it for 2 years. I sat on it, and then, just the book is just like it just calling me, and it just, the book just took hold of me. I read, a couple books like Dan Brown or Robert Greene books, and I read some other books, and I just, when you're watching movies or you're reading other books and you feel like it's coming close to your project, and then, and then people around you are just saying, hey, you got to put this out, you got to get it out, and, I've been talking about releasing this book, doing manuscripts and letting family and friends, read it and stuff, and I just felt like this is time, to let the world get a hold of it and get a grander opinion, from the world, so it's time that I put it out for the world to, get a taste of,
All right, time check. It's like an Ocean 11, Da Vinci Code kind of combination intrigue book. All right. Our next author, Mike Nichols, was medically retired in 2012 after he spent almost 12 years in the Army, and he has been writing ever since. Hey, Mike, tell me about Vandius.
It's about it's a dark fantasy fiction book about a prince who's the crown prince of a kingdom called Vortheria, and he ends up facing a dark power stronger than anything he's ever had to face before, and it ultimately changes the entire course of his life.
Is this something you've been thinking about for a while?
The idea came to me about 2.5 years ago, and I just had to write the book. It was almost an obsession versus being compelled.
Why do you think that is?
I've wanted to be a writer ever since I was in middle school. Writing was one of the only subjects I enjoyed in school, and it was just something I forgot about as I got older when I was in the Army. And then after I got out of the Army, I had no really idea what I was going to do with the rest of my life. And I was struggling with some personal demons of mine. And I started writing the book because writing had been something that had helped me get past those demons in the past. And before I knew it, half the manuscript was done, and I just was driven to continue it.
Do your demons play into the story in any way?
A little bit. I don't want to give too much of the story away, but you can tell with some of the story, it's painfully obvious that I was in the military.
All right. Well, tell me about your experience with self-publishing.
It was just, I was so excited to get it published, I didn't really stop to think about it. I didn't take in the fact that they didn't edit it at all. I'm not embarrassed that a book of mine out there is unedited, but it did give me the confidence I needed to find a traditional publisher.
They didn't edit it at all?
No, not at all. I was so excited that it was going to get published, I didn't read the contract very well. And that was one of the things with self-publishing. They don't edit it unless you pay for it. And I was just so excited I didn't take that into account.
Well, so what led you to Page?
Honestly, I was looking for literary agents, and I'd submitted it to a few, and I lost hope because a couple months had gone by and I didn't hear anything from him. And one night I was on the internet and I was looking for traditional publishers. I said, forget the middleman and find a publisher. And I found Page and submitted that I was interested in a submission kit. And person in charge called me back that night, so I submitted my story, and that's basically what led me to Page.
So now you're going to publish the next one through Page.
If they accept it, yes. I'm still waiting to hear back on them.
All right, Michael, it sounds like a great story, and I am sure your next book will be accepted by Page Publishing. Good luck with your writing. I give you a lot of credit. You're trying to make a living doing this. That's a tough one. That's like trying to be a musician, You usually got to have something else going on the side, until you get famous. You know what I mean? All the stories we get on this show about the horrors of self-publishing and vanity publishing, I am so glad that you shared with us what your experience was, because I think that somebody should write a book about that, about what you go through with vanity publishers and how much you pay and what do you get, right? If somebody writes a book about it, it might save a future author a lot of aggravation. That's all I'm saying. Okay, finally, no matter how many new electronic devices they make, one of the greatest things you can do with your child is to read. Nobody knows that better than Marianne Sullivan. You wrote Adventures with Mr. Rabbit.
Yes, I did.
Who's Mr. Rabbit?
He's just a little stuffed animal. I was a nanny to 3 little girls, or twin baby girls first, and then a year later, a little sister came along, so I had 3 babies until they were 2 years old. So at nap time, we would get Mr. Rabbit, and we would read a story, and then I would put him down for their nap, and they would go to sleep with Mr. Rabbit in a blanket, and I'd tell them to sleep and dream about the zoo or the park or, wherever we had gone. And so it was just a routine that we did, and actually they still do it. 2.5 and 3.5 years old, and they still, bedtime is a happy time, and that was the reason I wrote the book. I was inspired by them and the little stuffed Mr. Rabbit.
Where does Mr. Rabbit take us?
Well, there's 10 adventures that I wrote. Go to the park and the zoo and the amusement park and the circus and a magic show. Go to on a safari. We go to the pond and feed the animals in the pond. We go to a giant aquarium. We go to the beach. We go swimming. So there's 10 adventures. Like before you put them down, you say, well, let's go get Mr. Rabbit. It's time to take a nap. And then you read to them. And then during that time, what I believe in is it's a time for you to bond with your baby. And at the same time, it's educational because I use a lot of imagery and vocabulary, and you can stop along the way and discuss it with your baby. And it just builds a strong foundation for them in literacy. It's very important that you read to your young children. It makes a big difference. And the main thing is to have a routine. You do the same thing. And actually, the twins are old enough now to where they can tell you the story. I mean, they can get the book and they will start reading it, and you swear that they were reading the story. They just know it word for word.
How are you getting this book out there?
Well, I've gone on our local television station, and I went to our Barnes & Noble and had a book signing. So I read to all the little children, and some of them bought the book. So I've gone to all of the church schools, I call it, here in Dothan, and given them a copy to read to their children, trying to get the book out there for parents because it's a good tool for them to have. It really is. It really does work.
It works because it's just you and your baby, and your baby listens to your voice. One of the coolest things about being a parent is when your child first recognizes your voice, and they watch you talk to them, and they watch you read to them, and the next thing you know, they're looking at your lips. It's like the greatest thing in the world. And there is no electronic device that can take the place of that. Thanks again, Marianne. We're just about out of time. Thanks, Rob Barrett, for getting me through another show. Thank you for stopping by to check out our new authors. Come back next week for another edition of the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. Got a book inside of you? Let it out. Short of that, you got to get shopping. Hanukkah and Christmas are creeping up so fast. I can't believe it. Have a great weekend.